Hull College Group. I'm delighted to have been invited to speak at this webinar conference today. Unfortunately, it's pre-recorded because I am on another business as this is being shown on Wednesday, but I'd be delighted to take any post-conference questions and get back in touch with you. So I'm going to start the screen share with my presentation. So our journey began 2 years ago when I arrived at the organisation to find out that it was in financial difficulty. And I wanted to approach how I was going to tackle this, importantly through effective internal and external communication. So this snapshot talks you through how I went about it with my leadership team, and importantly how we worked with H&H to get there. So it's quite a difficult year that we went through. We were essentially taking the college from intensive care on the road to rehabilitation, and that's where we're at the moment, starting phase 2 of our journey to come out the other side. The scale of the challenge was quite immense. We had significant financial difficulties and 231 full-time jobs that we had to make redundant. So quite adverse times to be leading an organisation through and the staff through. But as I said to my team, if it doesn't challenge you, it doesn't change you. And we had to approach this with resilience and with as much equipment as we could in terms of preparing ourselves as a team. This is where our staff were 2 years ago. They didn't want to be on board. They didn't want to face up to what we had to go through, understandably. Throughout the communications that we've inputted into the organisation, last year we moved our staff to wanting to be on board and wanting to be on the journey. And we're now at a point where our staff are really trying to do what we're asking them to do to turn it around and run our steps to being fully recovered. But how did we get through all of that? We went through quite a siloed working where there was a fair blame culture under previous leadership and management of the organisation. That's how the staff said they felt. We got to a point where we've got staff really flying the flag for our organisation and being proud to be working where they are. We were subject to FE Commissioner intervention. It's published report back in January that explained what we had to do as an organisation. We had to change the way we were leading, had to change the way we were governing ourselves. And we put together a recovery plan, and communication was a key part of this in order to get staff on board, as well as external stakeholders, to show that we were really going to be a force to be reckoned with in the future. And so that started our journey in terms of our recovery. My plan was to be hot, and I've been hot throughout, honest, open and transparent. And that is the message that I gave to staff, stakeholders, managers, leaders, internally as we were moving forward. If it was open, honest and transparent communication, people knew where we were, why we were where we were, what we had to do about it, and most importantly, why we were doing the things we were doing. And I maintained this throughout the whole restructure programme and even now into our recovery. Internally, I did vlogs. So I did video messages for staff. I also did drop-in clinics, so staff could just come and see us whenever they needed to, if they wanted to ask any questions about what was happening, and I still operate these now, which opened up the channels of communication for the staff at the organisation. We engaged with H&H to put together a programme for us on how to engage staff. So we went from leading as a team, aligning our own direction, modelling those behaviours, and we removed our values and created a culture code. So we talked about how we wanted to behave as an organisation as opposed to having values. We listened to the employee voice in putting that together. So from the bottom up, we wanted to know what was it the staff wanted to feel like when they came to work at our organisation, and how could we develop that into a code of our culture. So we went through all of this journey with H&H, but primarily leading from the front with the team, modelling all of those behaviours that we wanted to see throughout the organisation. And that's something that's really close to my heart as a leader. So during the strikes, I wasn't a leader and manager sat in my office. I was sat in reception talking to staff and listening to them in terms of their worries, their concerns. So I was visible and I was seen. The culture code that we created was created by staff, for the staff. And then we launched that at a Christmas event, which again was put on through the staff themselves, and they led that whole event in terms of launching it. So it was very much leading from the front and within the staff. In terms of our own leadership team, we started with print, and this was really, really good in terms of getting us on the same page. If you remember a couple of slides ago, I talked about this, leading as a team. Print was essential in that because print profiled all the senior leaders and put us in a position where we knew how to communicate better with each other, and therefore were able to communicate with the staff. Because it's all right me leading from the front in terms of I'm wanting to lead with open, honest and transparent communication, but I needed the rest of my team to be like that and know how to interact and liaise with the rest of the organisation. So we did print together as a team, we had coaching as a team, and we went through project management development as well, so that we really could take this organisation through the restructure we had to, but by maintaining better internal communications and external communications as well. We had a whole scale restructure to do, which meant changing our processes, changing our systems and changing our structure. And had we not have had fantastic internal communication processes and a team like H&H to work with to put us in that position, that would have been an awful lot to do with complex communications without having a system and structure around that. We used Mac Pro process mapping software. So in terms of changing our processes, again, in terms of leading from the front, listening to internal communications, we asked the staff that were leading those processes and involved with them to redesign them themselves rather than it coming top down. So if I give you an example, we have a team within the organisation that take applications from students and they process them into enrolments to when they come and join us in September. The team got together to look at how we did that originally, and then they looked at how they could streamline it and make it easier and simplified with better software. And that's far easier listening to them on how they wanted to do that than us telling the organisation how it should be working. We then overlaid the systems on top of those processes that the staff were telling us that they wanted to change, and then we changed the structure around that. So the restructure that we went through was very much about taking a blank piece of paper and redesigning the whole organisation from scratch rather than reducing the payroll down. And that was one of the key communications that I gave internally and externally in terms of getting that buy-in from staff to understand why we had such large-scale redundancies to make. We communicated with a range of external stakeholders with exactly the same theory: open, honest, transparent, so they knew every step of the way what we were doing, why we were doing, which was really important. And then we continued to lead from the front. So in terms of understanding what the staff need, require, their concerns, their issues, we introduced back to the floor. So these are pictures of myself doing some back to the floors. These were designed to get the whole of the senior team out and about for a day with different teams to understand what it was like to be doing their jobs, but also to listen to them in terms of things that they found really useful, things that they found really helpful in their job, but also issues and concerns that they had within their job. So it really helped that internal communication where staff didn't feel they could come to us directly. It put us at the heart of the staff, and that's working really, really well, and it's coming up as a real strength. When I talk to the staff, they really wanted to carry on those back to the floor days, and it's proving very beneficial for them. And being open, honest, and transparent means you can control the message. There's no script to be learned if you're going to be open, honest, and transparent with your internal communications. It means you don't have to remember what you said the last time you went out to staff with an all staff email, or the last time you got called onto local radio. I could control the message all the way through the journey that we were on and the adverse time that we were on, because I was being open, honest, and transparent about where we were, what we were doing, why we were doing it, and why we had to do it. And importantly, listening back to the staff in terms of suggestions they had. And there was a raft of media that we had to navigate around. And again, you'll see down there from the bottom an open letter from myself. Again, it was something that we put out in the local media to really explain what we were doing and why we were doing it. So to summarise, I suppose the key learning thing that I took through last year and take through my leadership to today is, to survive, you must be able to tell stories, to get buy-in from your staff. They understand a story, they understand a belief, and they understand a vision when told in that way, and staff buy into that. As a result, our morale's increasing and our culture is changing, and we've got everything to play for moving forwards. So thank you to H&H and the team, and thank you very much for listening.